So the webinar is again for, Sierra and for the audience. We really care about customers taking advantage of everything that Sierra has to offer, and then guiding you through that process because it's not always an easy process. So Lucy and the team and myself have spent a lot of time and effort, kind of bringing out important information that we think that every designer needs to know. Sierra's been in the business in America for a while. A lot of the business has changed over the years, but what hasn't changed is that we do quick cycle time boards, and the complexity has definitely gotten more. And we also do assembly and supply chain management of components and component management. So that's how our business has changed in the last 10, 15 years. I don't see the change slowing down, but what remains constant is our transparency. We do not claim to be perfect, and we're not. And number two, our service to the customer is most important. And that is through, the resources we have as well as quick cycle time. So today we're going to be talking about, first of all, not choosing Sierra, just in general, how do you think about choosing a manufacturer and, what's the right way for you? And then looking at capabilities and then making sure you have all your ducks in a row, or, your items all put together properly to avoid any delays, whether, with Sierra or anyone else. So this should be a very useful webinar for everyone here. So again, ask questions. If I'm not touching on a topic enough, please definitely, ping, or if you have clarifications. So as an engineer, you may have certain criteria in selecting a manufacturer. As a buyer, you may have a whole different set of criteria of selecting a manufacturer. But the number one thing is, can the manufacturer deliver to your spec? And for us, also deliver to your spec in the timeline allotted. And then, of course, cost comes into play. So for us, we don't sell on cost. We sell on the extra value that we add, because there are places around the world which are less costlier than we are. So it's hard for us, impossible for us to compete on cost, but there's enough people who want the extra value. But as a designer, you have a lot to play in terms of the impact of cost, in terms of, did you make proper material choices, design decisions, stack up decisions? These all play a big role in cost. And at the end of the day, what is the yield for your manufacturer? Because the yield, at some point, that yield will come back as extra cost to you if the yield is not good. So that's the criteria. Those are the overall criteria, I think, that everyone should be considering when choosing a manufacturer to build their product. And we'll obviously go into a lot of detail. Now, there are some designs that have complete showstoppers. And so here is, the reason to look at the capabilities of a manufacturer. Do they have the equipment that meets your requirements and then will allow them to build a board to your spec? So one of the areas is, if it's a multi-layer board, what is the maximum board size, X and Y dimension, that they can manufacture? That basically boils down to what kind of lamination presses are there and what size of tooling has the fabricator set up for, and what kind of plates do they have to do the lamination. So, if the fabrication house doesn't have the right equipment for a larger board, then they just can't do it. So that's pretty much a showstopper. In terms of the number of layers, if the number of layers is a high count, then lamination presses should also be capable of doing, you know, the higher layer count boards. So basically, I'm putting a lot of attention to lamination press. Lamination press also has to do with, you know, how the material moves around. And if there's a lot of sub-laminations or HDI features on your stack up, then it's not just the lamination press, but also how the company is managing the scaling factors and managing the material movement of the different sub-lams. So that also plays a role. And then, of course, minimum trace and space is always a good measure because the finer the trace and space, specifically the space, then you know the fabricator has their processes in control and has good imaging and good etching, which is an essential part of manufacturing. But not all copper weights can handle the thinner spacing or tighter spacing. So you have to know what is your fabricator comfortable with in terms of, you know,